Coming up on Access Tech Live.
Be My Eyes solves packaging issues, the Game Conference Award winners, and connecting accessibility tech with people to test it.
This is Access Tech Live with Stephen Scott and Marc Aflalo. The latest in tech and accessibility every week. Follow us now and get involved at Access Tech Live.
Hey everybody, welcome along to another week of Access Tech Live. I am Stephen Scott. Marc Aflalo is by my side, as he is every week. Hey, how are you doing this week, Marc?
I'm good. I'm happy to be by your side. It's another week. Excited to be here. So many things to talk about, Stephen. Game Conference Awards last night. I mean, lots of fun coming up on this week's show.
Yeah, and you mentioned those awards. These are incredible awards. GA Conf is what the kids call them. This is an awards event that happens every year and really celebrates amazing work in the world of accessibility in mainstream gaming companies. And it doesn't just focus on the big games, like we've all talked about Forza Motorsport here on Access Tech Live. We've talked about it over on Double Tap as well. It's a fantastic game, which is very accessible now. Allows someone like me who, is almost totally blind to be able to drive a car, something I could never do in real life, but actually able to drive a car at 200 miles an hour. I'll probably still smash it into a wall. Thank goodness it's virtual. That's the upside. But, what a fantastic game and great opportunity to celebrate them, but also the companies that are kind of, making smaller games, the ones that have got, lesser developers, a number of developers that are trying their best to make their games saleable, but are also working hard to make sure those games are accessible. Plus, there's fantastic awards for individuals as well. So we're going to talk about all that today on the show. Looking forward to that. Also, we are going to be celebrating CES as well. Of course, yes, we're coming back to CES, flashing back to the big event that doesn't seem like it was only a couple of weeks ago.
I know.
We're going to be finding out today about the How Innovation Centre, what they're all about. We'll be joined by one of the representatives there. And Shaun of the Shed, a new episode drops today, and we'll be finding out all about that as well. So all that coming up, but first, Marc has the headlines.
Now, Access Tech Live headlines.
Let's begin with Unilever. They've partnered with Be My Eyes to add AI technology to the cooking experience of their products. This new partnership builds on the addition of on-pack accessible QR codes in their products in the UK. Now, Unilever is initially trialing this technology in the UK through their Coleman Singapore Noodles meal maker, which plans to expand to more brands in 2024. Scanning the QR code, shoppers will be now directed to Be My Eyes in the app itself and be connected to a volunteer or a virtual AI chatbot to address, questions around the recipe and cooking and how to do it. This is the first time that Be My Eyes technology has been integrated with a food product. Now, Unilever's customer support team will also be integrated into the app experience itself, allowing shoppers to automatically be connected to the Coleman's customer care team for further support if needed. Volt Hockey is a new program in Winnipeg that gives kids living with disabilities the chance to play hockey. The sport's played 3-on-3 in a gymnasium using motorized chairs that can go up to 14 miles per hour. The chairs have a blade on the end, and the sport uses a wiffle ball. Variety Manitoba is offering a free 2-hour session every Sunday at the Dakota Community Centre Fieldhouse with the hopes of creating teams throughout the city. The sport has seen success in Canada, different provinces, with teams in Alberta, Ontario, and even Brandon. Now, if you can't wait to try Google's new Circle to Search feature that we talked about last week with the Galaxy S24 and that whole lineup, well, your wait is almost over because the new feature is actually going to make it to other devices as well next week. Yup. Pixel 8 and Pixel 8 Pro will get the new feature on January 31st, the day that the S24 and the whole Galaxy series launches publicly as well. Very, very cool stuff. I cannot wait to get hands on myself. Now, OnePlus, another cell phone manufacturer, just dropped their new flagship devices, the OnePlus 12 and the 12R in Canada and the US. It's rocking the latest Snapdragon 8 chip processor, the Gen 3 version. It's got a Hasselblad camera on board, a sharp 2K 120 Hz display, plus it charges super fast with an 80-watt wired and 50-watt wireless option. Why is that significant? Well, in 20 minutes, you can get up to 99%, which is pretty cool. It's the first phone to get that Snapdragon Spaces Ready stamp, which means that top-notch performance and efficiency for those gamers who want to game on their phone. You can grab that starting February 6th for $1,069.99 Canadian or $799 in the US if you happen to be over there listening. We are celebrating the 40th anniversary on January 24th of the Macintosh. Yes, the Mac is the first computer to popularize the computer mouse, which at one time was super controversial, in addition for, typically text-based interface. The Mac became a favorite in education in the late 70s and later became even more popular in the late 90s when Steve Jobs returned to Apple in 97. From colorful iMacs to the way we use graphical user interface, the Mac was a pivotal innovation in the personal computer space and has shaped the way we use PCs today. I don't think, Stephen, anybody can argue that point as we celebrate the 40th anniversary just yesterday.
I know, I am so excited about this, and I'm so glad that it's going to also feature as part of our question of the day. It's one of the, I love the question of the day because it gives us a chance to hear from our audience. But honestly, I just want you to ask me this question today, and I want to talk about it the whole hour. Can we do that? Is that allowed?
Nope, you can't do that, but we have to save it for the end of the show. We got to let everybody at home get involved. They can let us know on social media.
That's
it's the 40th anniversary of the Mac, Stephen. What was your favorite Mac? So that is a question. It's the 40th anniversary of the Mac.
Question.
What was your favorite Mac? So how do you get involved? At Access Tech Live is the address on all our social media. If you want to email us, feedback at Access Tech Live as well, and you can get involved. When we return, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into this week's headlines, and later Steve Saylor, aka The Blind Gamer, joins us to talk all about those Game Conference awards. Stick around. It's Access Tech Live.
There's more Access Tech Live to come. Get involved and have your say at Access Tech Live on social media. We'll be right back. Access Tech Live will return in less than 2 minutes. Access Tech Live is in a commercial break. Access Tech Live will return in less than 2 minutes. Access Tech Live is in a commercial break. The show will return in less than a minute. Access Tech Live will be back in 30 seconds. Now, back to Access Tech Live. The latest in tech and accessibility with Stephen Scott and Marc Aflalo.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Access Tech Live. Coming up, we're going to be talking about the GA Conf Awards. We're hearing from Steve Saylor, who hosted the event on Wednesday night. Looking forward to hearing from him to find out all about the event itself, and we'll be talking through some of the winners as well, and we'll be telling you all about the How Innovation Centre as well, a special interview from CES. Now, Marc, let's dive into some of these headlines in more depth, because Be My Eyes, you mentioned up top there. Isn't it such a fantastic app? Have you signed up to be a volunteer yet? Have I bullied you into this yet?
You've bullied me into it, but I'll be honest, I don't think I was ever accepted into it.
Oh, really?
I don't know if what the criteria was, but clearly I didn't meet the criteria. It's been a while. Like, I honestly, this was before we did this show here. I did try, and I wasn't accepted right away, but I'm sure I would be now because we have a little bit of an in.
Yeah.
But Steven, this feels like the little app that could. Like, they can't stop every time I look for news, they're in the headlines talking about a new announcement, a new partnership, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's OpenAI, whether it's Unilever. It really is amazing to see all these integrations on this little app that just started as a way to help people with low vision, get about their day. It's just so cool to see the story unfold like this.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very simple app, as you say, and with a very simple mission to connect sighted people with blind people. But of course, it goes a lot further than that. And, these partnerships are twofold, because on one hand, it's all about making this product more, available to more people, getting companies involved as well so that they can get involved and, get their customer service teams more directly available and made more directly available to blind people, which is wonderful. I mean, Microsoft, for example, the Disability Answer Desk is now available on there, and the amount of times I've had issues with my computer, with my PC or whatever, I can just call them up and I get instant access to those people who know exactly what I need. They know I'm using a screen reader, for example, or they might know that someone's deaf, or they may know that someone has issues with physical or motor issues, and therefore they're able to provide support directly to that individual based on our needs, rather than going through, as I did at the very, very beginning. The first time I remember calling Microsoft with an issue, it was at the time when you had to make sure your license key was correct or whatever it was, and I remember mine just wasn't right. And I contacted them and I said, look, I just can't get to this box. I'm using a screen reader, so I'm tabbing around my screen, and this person could not understand. I just could not understand what I was talking about. Yeah. And eventually I found out about the Disability Answer Desk. Now it's available through Be My Eyes. I can talk to that person, but they can see the reality of this as well. They can see the problem. The other side of this, though, is that with all of these partnerships, it creates relationships and it creates financial stability for this app, which is something in our community we often have trouble with. I mean, we saw this week a fantastic app in the US called Menus for All. Actually had over 1 million restaurant menus on there across US and Canada. A fantastic application. It fell by the wayside. They've announced this week that app will be no more. And on February 28th, they'll be closing the app down because of lack of subscription, lack of essentially an investment from us as a community. And that's the challenge, because we're such a small community. Can we possibly afford to keep all these apps going? Whereas what Be My Eyes are doing is saying, hang on a minute, let's actually focus on companies working with us and let them sustain the app, which is a much better way to do it.
So to a user perspective, Be My Eyes is absolutely free?
Yeah, I mean, that's it. So, not only to a user, so a blind person like me can use this app day and night. I can talk to, meet, chat to amazing people.
No limits, nothing whatsoever.
None at all. Obviously, we always put in this caveat whenever anyone talks about Be My Eyes. I always say this: just be careful what you're sharing. If you're asking if this shirt is okay or asking what color it is, that's fine. But if you're asking, hey, what is this financial statement saying? And here's my bank details. Can you just read these out? That's
here's
probably
my PIN
not
number. Can you help me type it in so I can go to the account? Yeah,
that's
common sense, right? Like, use your common sense when you're using it. But the fact that it's free, like, honestly, the fact that they've looked at these partnerships and these models to sustain itself is honestly quite brilliant. And I'm wondering how much the news about OpenAI's involvement and just Be My AI has accelerated the growth, because I think that we're hearing more and more and more about Be My Eyes in the headlines ever since that announcement of Be My AI. You think that's a safe assessment?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's absolutely propelled this app. But I think what it's really doing is highlighting what AI can do for blind people. And I think, if I'm honest, Mike Buckley and the guys over at Be My Eyes are really trying to just showcase what is possible. Because they know, as well as we all know, that this is going to increase and expand. There are going to be new ways for blind people to be able to engage with the world. When computer vision gets to the point where it's able to see live video and be able to react to that and actually almost audio describe our lives, that's when things change. And Be My Eyes, I think, know that. They just want to show what's possible here, and they're doing that. But the core service, the core ability to be able to talk to another human is fantastic. The reason, and it's important to understand this, the reason that Be My AI really exists, underneath all of the relationships and the work they do with OpenAI and all of that, it was to help people who didn't want to or didn't feel comfortable talking to a volunteer. So if you didn't feel comfortable connecting with someone, you didn't feel able to talk to them, maybe you were nonverbal, maybe you couldn't, then you could type into your phone the question you want to get asked, and you could get that information back. And I think that's really, really powerful.
Let's talk about the Mac for a second, pivot a bit, because 40th anniversary of the Mac. Maybe I can ask you the question now, which was what your favorite Mac is. We can poke people along and let them get involved at home.
Yeah.
But do you have a favorite? Is there a specific model that was pivotal in your life?
Absolutely. So the very first Mac I remember, officially, there's an official one, and then there's one I really remember because I fell in love with it. The official one was the 145, the PowerBook 145, which was a grayscale.
That's not specific at all.
PowerBook. No way specific. But that was the one I always remember. But the one I fell in love with was the PowerBook 190C. Now, why would I be so specifically loving that one? Well, for two reasons. One, it was the first color PowerBook I ever used. Before they were called MacBooks, they were called PowerBooks. And what was cool about it was a color, which was actually quite new at that time.
Like the device was a color or a color screen?
Color screen.
Oh, wow,
Every other one before that was black and white or grey scale and white, right? So now this was color. It was like exciting. I could play games on there. I had a bit more vision than I do now. It wasn't the most accessible system in the world, though, because, of course, in those days you had no voiceover. You had not much. In fact, there was one product that came out for System 8. Now, of course, I was using System 7.5 back in the old days. So, this is going back a bit. But System 8 brought out an application called Outspoken, which was created as a third-party application that was like a voiceover of today. And that was kind of the early days version of VoiceOver. So for System 8 and System 9, you had Outspoken. And then when Mac OS 10 came along, or Mac OS X, that's when we started to see VoiceOver appear. But yeah, the PowerBook 190C was the one I loved. It was also, aside of being color, aside of having the first trackpad I ever remembered, I had to go in a training class to learn how to use the trackpad. That's how old I am, kids. And then on top of that, it was also, and this is what I love, it was featured in the movie Independence Day. It was the laptop used by Jeff Goldblum to work out when the aliens were going to blow the planet up or whatever it is we're going to do. So cool.
Amazing. Well, do you think, and I know Steve Jobs has always been quoted as saying how pivotal the Mac was, and he gives it credit for obviously the first graphical user interface. He gives it credit for the first computer that used, sans serif fonts and different graphics. A lot of companies make claims that aren't necessarily true because they want to hype themselves. How accurate do you think those claims were, and others that Apple made as a company about the significance of the computer? Because I'll be honest, I only switched to a Mac probably about, I would say 10 years ago, when certain software went over to a Mac. And that was, when they went to Intel chips, that's when I find that it become a little bit more cool to have a Mac. It wasn't just these kind of, programmers and stuff in the corner who were using them. Do you think the claims are real?
Yeah, well, you have to remember as well, when I was growing up, we're talking early 90s, I was at school. So, we're talking at a time when Macs were big in education as well. So that was another area they were huge in. Yeah. And of course, they were huge in the creative industries. A lot of people would feel that it was the only way to edit video or create audio, make music, all those things. That was how you did it in those days. PCs were for business. They were for spreadsheets.
Yep.
People who got all excited about wearing a suit and using a keyboard all day would love a PC. But of course, the Mac was for the cool guys, right? I mean, there was even adverts at the time about, how cool the Mac was in comparison to the guy in a suit, who was using the PC. But, I think you're right. I think that he definitely created something different. And interestingly, when it came to the accessibility, and I always come back to this, but, I find it so fascinating because no one else talks about this. When VoiceOver was created, it was kind of seen as a competitor to Narrator on Windows, which is the screen reader over there on Windows. And of course it wasn't. The difference being was that, Narrator was built to kind of follow the screen, to follow the focus of a screen, to follow the navigation, whereas VoiceOver was the first accessible system ever developed for blind people to be able to actually use the system as intended, to work with that graphical user interface you're talking about. So, and that, I have to ask you if you can work out what year it was that actually came in, because we know Outspoken was around System 8, System 9.
Okay.
Can you remember the year, or do you know the year that VoiceOver actually showed up on a Mac?
You've asked me this question before, and I think that I'm going to, I either undershoot it or overshoot it, and I'm still amazed by the answer. I'm going to say 2000.
Now, it's interesting because I asked this question to a few people, and they all said, it must be 90s. You say 2000. The answer is 2005. And that,
So
by
it's
the way,
even
was
later,
the
you
first
see, yeah.
version. That was the first version of VoiceOver. That started to then grow. It was kind of talked about in 2004. It actually appeared in 2005. It then appeared on the iPhone in 2009, and then onwards to the iPad and to other devices. So it's not actually as old as people think it is. And, you know, it's also important to say that way back on, and I remember this, I don't know why I'm so geeky to remember this stuff, but Mac OS 10 Jaguar, if you remember that particular operating system,
God.
that was the first one to ever include any accessibility at all. And that had in it options for visual, hearing, and motor disabilities as well, which was really interesting way back then. And that was called Universal Access back in the day. That then disappeared, VoiceOver came along, and then, of course, the whole suite of other accessibility products that they now have inside their devices. That's not the only reason I love the Mac. I used it at school. I think it just became part of who I was. It became part of me. Yeah. I wasn't the cool kid at school, so if that was the not cool option, I was with it all the way.
You went with it. Well, you know what? If you remember last season, we had this interview with Rob Arbitier, who was Stevie Wonder's engineer, musical computer engineer, really. And he told us that, you know, it was Stevie Wonder who whispered accessibility into Steve Jobs' ear and got his attention and got things moving. Whether that's true or not, I don't think we'll ever know, but it's a very, very cool anecdote, and you can find that on our YouTube channel. I will say that, and a potential lawsuit with the National Federation of the Blind in the States, but we'll park that for the moment, exactly. Just to give them the rite of passage as well. But you know, that was a big conversation. There's no doubt, though, I'm sure, that Stevie Wonder had an influence in that. Well, happy anniversary to the Mac, obviously. Let us know your experiences and what your favorite Mac is. That is the question of the day. But coming up, Steve Saylor joins us, talk all about the Game Conference Awards, which he co-hosted just last night. Plus, we'll break down all the categories and winners right after we take a quick break here on Access Tech Live.
There's more Access Tech Live to come. Get involved and have your say at Access Tech Live on social media. We'll be right back. Access Tech Live will return in less than 2 minutes. Access Tech Live is in a commercial break. Access Tech Live will return in less than 2 minutes. Access Tech Live is in a commercial break. The show will return in less than a minute. Access Tech Live will be back in 30 seconds. Access Tech Live, the latest in tech and accessibility with Stephen Scott and Marc Aflalo.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Access Tech Live. I am Stephen Scott, Marc Aflalo is with me, and last night, Wednesday night, was when we saw the announcements made, the winners announced, Marc, of the GA Conf Awards, the Game Accessibility Conference Awards. As I say, the kids call it GA Conf. And this was all about really just showcasing the wonderful work being done by companies out there who create games, big and small. Now, Steve Saylor is known as the Blind Gamer. He was the host of the event. I caught up with him before the event to find out how the event was going to be planned, what we were expecting to learn. Steve Saylor, welcome to Access Tech Live.
Thank you so much, Stevens. It's a pleasure to be able to be here.
Fantastic. So tell us, for those who don't know about the Game Conference Awards, what is it all about? How does it work? And how did you get involved?
So the Game Accessibility Conference has been a conference that's been going for several years now, run by Ian Hamilton and Tara Volker. They put together a conference because they realized that at places like GDC or Game Developers Conference, or there was like a lot of different conferences for game developers, but there wasn't really a lot for game accessibility. So they created this conference essentially to kind of bridge that gap, and then they realized that they actually can be able to, there's a lot of influence within the community, that we realize there's a lot of games that are coming out that should be celebrated with how much accessibility they're putting into the games. And so they decided like, hey, you know what, let's just make our own awards. And last year was the first attempt at it, and this is our second year doing it. And they tapped me to host it, and I was like, yeah, sure, like I'm totally down, because they were the ones that kind of gave me my first really official start in the industry, being able to connect with so many developers who were interested and passionate about accessibility. So it was a no-brainer to be able to collaborate with them and be welcome back to host it again for a second time.
Yeah, you mentioned some great names there. Ian Hamilton, we had Tara Volker on the show recently talking about gaming. And, one question I like to always ask, because, this show is for a wide range of people, and a lot of people out there are not playing games. And, like me, for example, someone who didn't play a lot of games growing up, because I just, as I realized, and actually very similar to your story, realized it was because I couldn't, not because we were terrible at playing games. It was just that we couldn't do it. We just visually had that challenge. So, the question I often ask around this time of year is, how have things improved? And it seems that last time we spoke, you and I spoke over on Double Tap about this last year. And, I asked you the question, how is game accessibility going? How is the movement moving towards a more accessible gaming world? And it seems that it's just powering on. Oh, totally.
Like, it's compared from where we were last year. Last year we had some pretty good accessible games, and there was definitely a lot of movement there. But this year, not only just across the industry, just for anyone who's not disabled, this has actually kind of been sort of the best year for game releases that we've had in a very long time, and even more so as well with accessible games. For instance, like there was the sort of the biggest kind of like the Oscars of video games, the Game Awards is just happened, and essentially we've been able to the innovation and accessibility category was a category that I thankfully was also asked to be a judge or at least a part of the jury on to help decide some of the nominees, and it was very hard to pick games, like just finding, like it used to be trying to find 5 top games to be able to nominate, but this year was the first time that it was like I don't know what to choose, because there was so many great games that it was a surprise to me what actually became the nomination or what actually was nominated for the category. So this year has definitely seen a really not only the fact that it's like we've had more accessible games, but games that are also seen as masterpieces or like getting 9s and 8s out of 10s for across the industry. So it's really cool to be able to see like just how big of a growth it's been just within the past year.
Yeah, because that was going to be one of my questions. What's the game we should be looking out for this year? What's like the #1 game? Because I remember it was Last of Us everyone talked about, and then God of War Ragnarok was another one. There was lots of games that were coming out, or specific games coming out, that were kind of being pointed to in terms of excellence. What is it this year? That's the thing, is that there's a lot, like no matter what kind of corner or what type of genre you're into, there actually are games that fit within a lot of genres. If you're talking fighting games alone, we have Street Fighter 6 for motor disability. The fact that they have different sort of type of control schemes that you can be able to learn and play from and get better at. Then there's also Mortal Kombat 1 with its amazing blind accessibility it's built in, including nothing is more creepier and scarier and gorier than listening to audio described versions of the fatalities in Mortal Kombat. They're just as gross as they are visually. So you got that genre. Then you have the racing genre with Forza Motorsport and the Crew Motorfest basically being really great for accessibility. Then you got action adventure with Spider-Man, and you got Diablo 4. Like you got a lot of different games depending on which genre you like. So there's not really kind of one game that sort of stands out amongst them all, like you said with the Last of Us previously.
obviously, like there's just been, it just depends on what genre you're interested in. There's a game there that came out this year that is really accessible.
Nothing quite like audio-described fatalities in gaming. Well, that's a line that's going to live on for a while, isn't it?
I've had to produce audio for the strangest things, and animated stuff was always the one when you have to do like stabbing effects and different things like that. My hat's off to Foley artists who make sound effects.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes, you're wondering what gross sound is, and you find out it's like a chip bag and
that's right. I know it's the strangest thing. It's not what you would imagine it to be. Absolutely not. That was Steve Saylor, by the way. He's he was the host of the event that took place last night online. It's a virtual event and a fantastic opportunity to learn about the accessibility in gaming across many different companies, big and small. Now, one of the big winners on the night, and it may not be a surprise, and I mentioned it earlier, Forza Motorsport, which is, of course, just for me, I think just such an exciting game. Of course, the great thing is there's accessibility tools in this for lots of different people, lots of different disabilities. And it has, of course, I think it was 3 categories, wasn't it? One in?
Yeah, so AAA Excellence Award for exceptional accessibility in a high-budget game. They won that. They also won Best Blind Low Vision Accessibility and Greatest Accessibility Innovation. So 3 awards, and we're gonna go through the whole list here. There's some that we're not gonna mention. There's some like for different articles and stuff like that. So hats off to obviously everybody who won these awards. So it was definitely a fun night, and Forza, I mean, the top of the heap there. But let's go to the indie side. So on the indie side, there was the game Stories of Blossom. It won the Indie Excellence Award, Stephen, and its creator, Soft Lake Studios, was actually recognized with Most Dedicated Studio Award for their constant efforts in creating accessible games. That's always a fun one. Hi-Fi Rush won.
Yeah, just to say on that, because one of the great things about some of these games, and of course the GA Conf itself, is on their website, gaconf.com, you can go and actually learn more about these organizations. Every single entry has a link to either the company or LinkedIn to somebody, but it also has videos. And Stories of Blossom, there's a really interesting video you can go and watch, which tells you all about the story of it, the creation of it, and how they developed it with the disabled community, which is fantastic.
Hi-Fi Rush won Best Deaf or Hard of Hearing Accessibility. That's a pretty cool one. Street Fighter 6, this was a big winner as well. And this is, we hear a lot about these games leading up to it. Street Fighter 6 won for Best Physical and Mobility Accessibility. And this really takes advantage of a lot of the accessories out there, like the adaptive controllers, which is super cool.
Yeah, that's the best thing about a lot of these games. There are more disabled people who are able to play these games. We have to remember, of course, the game is one half of the story, right? You have to be able to physically be able to play the game. That is where, like you say, the Xbox adaptive controller, the PlayStation 5 accessible controller, that is where they really come into their own. But of course, the games have to have functionality in them that make it accessible, and they have these game studios have worked really hard.
Yeah. It wouldn't be a Game Awards if you wouldn't have a Star Wars title in there. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order won for Best Cognitive Accessibility Award, followed by Dead Space, which won for Best Mental Health Accessibility and Most Improved Award for Extensive Enhancements thanks to a DLC. I love that title. I love Best Mental Health Accessibility. And when I was looking up, various images, I see this giant row. I got to play some of these games. I really need to get a little bit back into gaming. Don't tell my son I said that, because he might wonder why I'm logging into his Steam account. I have
to be honest, this is the first year in a long time I've seriously thought this is maybe the time for me to buy a games console, because there seems to be so much out there that is, and it's interesting because we don't think about a game that could benefit mental health. In fact, most people would argue, video games are the exact opposite of that. They would worsen your mental health. But I don't think that's true. There are a lot of games that can really help people. They can help people focus. They can help people relax, chill out. There was even games that were winning, with great representation in them as well, which is really
that's
wonderful.
The next one I was going to bring up. Thanks for ruining that one for me. Spider-Man 2 recognized for Best Representation. Pretty cool awards. I mean, other notables are the Hardware Accessibility Award went to the September PS5 update. I love how it's specific to the PS5 update in September.
Yeah, which version
Ubisoft
number was that?
I'll get back to you on that, okay? Ubisoft was also acknowledged with Most Dedicated Publisher Award for productions like Assassin's Creed Mirage and The Crew and Motorfest. So congratulations to everybody who picked up an award.
Well done.
And don't forget, this was also for 2023, right? So it's like it's like the award season, right? So we're talking about games. There were updates on some of these games even past 2023 that people are already talking about, Stephen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well done to everybody involved, including, of course, Tara Volker, who is behind the organisation of this, Ian Hamilton, who's a friend of our show as well, and, of course, to Steve Saylor for doing all that wonderful work hosting.
Coming up, when we return here on Access Tech Live, we're going to flash back to CES. As we told you last week, our cameras kept rolling after the live show ended, and we met a very cool company and a very cool individual. She's the executive director of the How Innovation Center at the Perkins School for the Blind. Sandy Lacey is up next. Stick around.
There's more Access Tech Live to come. Get involved and have your say at Access Tech Live on social media. We'll be right back. Access Tech Live will return in less than 2 minutes. Access Tech Live is in a commercial break. Access Tech Live will return in less than 2 minutes. Access Tech Live is in a commercial break. The show will return in less than a minute. Access Tech Live will be back in 30 seconds. To Access Tech Live, the latest in tech and accessibility with Stephen Scott and Marc Aflalo.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Access Tech Live. Just a reminder, of course, to get involved with our question of the day. A great chance for you to answer the question, what do you remember of the Mac? What was your first experience of the Mac? What was your first one? Get in touch and tell us. Social media, write in the comments. Do whatever it is you do. Just get in touch. Write a letter, stick it in a pigeon or something and send it to, throw it out the window and see what happens. Listen, CES, of course, happened a couple of weeks ago. We had some fantastic episodes, 2-hour-long specials that you can catch up with right now on AMI Plus. You can also find them on YouTube as well. So go there and watch those, but not right now because we're giving you another exclusive look at some of the conversations we had after our cameras stopped rolling on those 2 specials, Marc.
CES, the gift that keeps on giving. After the live show, Stephen, we caught up with Sandy Lacey. She's the executive director of the How Innovation Center at the Perkins School for the Blind. Now, we started our conversation by asking Sandy what the How Innovation Center actually is.
The How Innovation Center is really focused on catalyzing and convening an ecosystem of support around disability technologies. So we're really focused on connecting innovators with the community of people with disabilities so that better co-designed accessible products make it to market.
So essentially you're linking together the people who are creating products with the people who use them, right?
That's right. We are creating a variety of different partnerships so that we can remove friction points in the innovation process. So an innovation ecosystem is really comprised of startups, investors, academia and research institutions, large corporations that care about disability inclusion and accessibility, physical test beds, government agencies, basically any entity that cares about accelerating innovation in accessibility and disability technologies. We're working alongside them so that we can get more inclusive designed products into market.
What kind of friction do you encounter when you're either working with the companies who are designing stuff or the disability community? Where do you find the most friction that you have to try to alleviate?
Yeah, well, I think entrepreneurship in general, there's a ton of friction points that entrepreneurs and founders face when trying to build a company. But specifically in disability tech, there's two really unique friction areas that I think are quite unique to building in the space of disability. The first is finding customers for primary market research and user testing. So let's say you're building a fintech app for millennials with student loan debt. Well, it's not going to be hard to find 1,000 millennials to respond to a survey and 300 to test your product for initial feedback, because guess what? A lot of millennials have student loans. But if you're building something for people who are deaf and hard of hearing, for example, how do you go about finding your customer? Well, usually entrepreneurs in this space, they go to organizations, disability organizations that work with that community of people with disabilities, trying to find access to customers. And Perkins receives inbound inquiries like this all the time from student groups, entrepreneurs, even Fortune 100 companies are looking for access to our community of people with disabilities for primary market research and user testing. But we're not alone in this. I think a lot of disability organizations receive similar inbound requests, but our organizations aren't really functionally built to meet those demands from the innovation community. They're built to serve the community of people with disabilities that they were stood up to serve. So we are hoping to make it easier for innovators, whether they're designing specifically for people with disabilities or not, maybe they're just building a product for the general population, to find our community and to co-design alongside them and to understand their innovation opportunity areas from the beginning.
Now, there's an interesting flip side to this, and I face this a lot as a blind consumer, where you have a company who wants to create a product, a really interesting product perhaps in their view, that can make my life easier. And I never asked for it. Right. I didn't want it.
Right.
Huge amounts of money are spent developing it,
right.
And then it comes to market and fails because guess what? No blind people asked for it, so no one buys it.
Right.
This happens a lot. It's probably not unique. In fact, I'm more than certain it's not unique to blind people, but it does happen a lot in the fields of one particular area you mentioned there was navigation. So how do you combat that? How do you make sure that companies can stay on track with the message from the community?
It's a great point, and we've seen it time and time again. So there's a lot of well-intentioned entrepreneurial energy that just isn't necessarily being channeled towards problems that the disability community experiences. So we're really hoping to crowdsource and amplify those innovation challenges that the disability community would like to see entrepreneurs tackle, and we're working on a variety of different ways in which we can go about doing that. A lot of it too, though, is really entrepreneurs, like the example that you used about in the navigation space, that you didn't ask for it, it's not of use to you, it gets to the market and it fails. A lot of the times they're actually not aware that other companies have already walked that path, and you can learn from people who have preceded you in an entrepreneurial journey. So we're really using research as a great way to help a variety of folks within the disability ecosystem understand what's already been built, who funded it, what happened with that product, and so that entrepreneurs can actually find each other. We've created a market map of innovations specifically for the blind and the visually impaired, with over half of them being in the navigation space, so that startups within that space can see who their competitors are, investors can understand who's already out there when they're going about their due diligence. So we're really taking a research-first approach.
I want to ask you as well, because of course this is so multifaceted, right? And you talk about the companies and the creation of the products, but I also think that there's sometimes a challenge for creators, for entrepreneurs, who perhaps are sitting there thinking, I want to build this product, and they want to talk to the community, but the community itself maybe doesn't exactly know either it wants it or it needs it.
Yes.
So do you try and sort of, I guess, harness that message as well? Because that can be challenging for entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. So something that we're very focused on doing at the How Innovation Center is actually building a community of people with disabilities to inform innovators. We're in the very, very early stages of doing this, but we want to make it as seamless as possible for, it's not just entrepreneurs, it's student groups. So people who are even like earlier in their professional career trajectory, all the way to Fortune 100 companies who know that they should be designing products and services in partnership with people with disabilities, but they themselves have trouble finding 50 folks who are blind or low vision to test their products with. We want to focus on creating that community, standardizing incentives around that community, and making it very easy for anybody who's basically building a product or service for even the general population to learn from and understand what the experience and the needs are of somebody with a disability, so that that is informed at the beginning and not an afterthought. You know, I've been in tech for 20 years. I've been in the disability tech space for just almost 2 now, and something I've really come to understand is that tech has done a pretty good job of prioritizing privacy and security in all of our product developments that are out there on the market. But accessibility and inclusive design has not always been at the forefront or a priority in product development. We want to change that.
Sandy, do you only work with blind, low vision, or all disability?
So at Perkins, we have around 200 children on campus who have multiple complex disabilities. 50% of them have a second disability. So most of them have a blindness or low vision, but they also have a second disability. We serve 1,400 kids across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, also with multiple complex disabilities. We're an international NGO. We're in over 12 countries across the globe. There are 240 million children in the world with a disability. And so when I came on board to start the How Innovation Center, I looked at our community, our stakeholders, and I realized that if we were going to try to catalyze and convene an innovation ecosystem, focusing exclusively on blindness and low vision actually wasn't going to be serving our community of kids with disabilities, because there's many overlaps between blindness and deafness, blindness and a mobility disability, autism, ADHD, you name it. So we are pan-disability, and at the How Innovation Center, we're actually across all age ranges as well. You know, Perkins, our educational programs focus on preparing our kids for the world, and the How Innovation Center is really focused on preparing our world for our kids.
We're, of course, in the middle of Braille Literacy Month, and we just celebrated World Braille Day as well.
Yes.
I want to ask you a little bit about Braille and how that impacts in the business sense, because I wonder how companies understand how to implement Braille into their products, into their design these days.
Yeah, Braille is fascinating. I'm personally very fascinated with Braille. The Perkins School for the Blind, we actually in 1953 invented the Perkins Brailler, which is a main way for folks who are blind or low vision to produce Braille, and we still manufacture and distribute this product across the globe. You know, tactile display innovation is fascinating. It's not something that before I even came to Perkins I was aware of. I actually had the misconception that most folks who are blind or low vision are Braille readers, and that's completely false. 10% of people who are blind or low vision can read Braille, and there's a lot of reasons as to why that is. It's super hard to learn, and access to a teacher is very important. There are companies out there that are trying to gamify learning Braille, which I think is really fascinating, through technology. So somebody might be in a place where they don't have access to a teacher, but the technology can actually make it more fun and accessible. There are companies that are innovating in surface technology so that actuators that move like the pins up and down can the surfaces don't have to be repeatedly replaced over a period of time. There's a lot of really fascinating innovation in the tactile display space. And, you know, I would say as a sighted person, when I joined Perkins, I really have been on a long listening journey over the last 2 years. And I had a question for some of my colleagues, which was, you know, what is the importance of Braille now that we have audio technology, right? And I learned so much about how the importance of, you know, reading with your own voice, being able to take notes on your own or write on your own, being able to join along while participating in group song, for example. All of these reasons are why Braille is incredibly important and continues to remain important today, even with the advent of maybe substitutive technologies.
Sandy, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. You have a standing invitation to come back on whenever you want to.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I've had a wonderful time.
That was Sandy Lacey there, the Executive Director at the Howe Innovation Centre at Perkins School for the Blind. Talking my language about Braille, Mark.
It is your language, indeed. When we come back, we get to your answers to our question of the day and the reason why phrasing these things are very, very important. Stick around.
There's more Access Tech Live to come. Get involved and have your say at Access Tech Live on social media. We'll be right back. Access Tech Live will return in less than 2 minutes. Access Tech Live is in a commercial break. Access Tech Live will return in less than 2 minutes. Access Tech Live is in a commercial break. The show will return in less than a minute. Access Tech Live will be back in 30 seconds. Access Tech Live, the latest in tech and accessibility with Stephen Scott and Marc Aflalo.
Welcome back. I am Stephen Scott. He is Marc Aflalo. Now, coming up, we'll get to our question of the day. Marc is going to run through all of your thoughts and suggestions on our big question today. Just a quick mention, though, of the brand new Shaun of the Shed podcast, which is now out on YouTube and in audio as well. You can check it out. Shaun, this time around, is talking all about Braille, learning Braille using Braille apps. Oh, I'm so excited. I'm going to check it out right after this show because this is something I love, as you well know. We just heard about it, of course, from Sandy earlier, talking about the importance of Braille. I was in my element.
In your element. Okay, Stephen, the question of the day today is, it's the 40th anniversary of the Mac. What was your favorite Mac? Now, I learned a pretty interesting lesson this week, okay? You see, when you ask a question like this on social media especially, it's extremely important to be very specific about what you're saying because the word Mac was clearly misinterpreted when I saw responses like, the Big Mac is my favorite Mac, or Mac and cheese, or Mac cosmetics, or Mac the truck from the Cars movies. And my favorite, Stephen, this was the best. I've always liked Bernie Mac. So I've learned a lesson this week, which is be extremely specific when you ask people questions on social media. They'll take any opportunity to just make fun of you. So I rephrased it. I said, it's the 40th anniversary of the Apple Macintosh. And in brackets, I wrote, not the McDonald's sandwich. What was your favorite Mac? And I got some serious responses. Patricia wrote, we had one of these, LOL. And she posted a picture of the Apple II with the giant keyboard and, the screen on top that we had in school. She goes, can you imagine how many people develop carpal tunnel syndrome from this keyboard? And she posted that picture. Yeah, you know what? I remember those clicky, like, oh my God. And you had to bang it.
You really had to push them.
To get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Marc Francois writes, I hated them all. Well, okay, we can't always, get what we want.
Get that off the screen.
Jeffrey wrote us. Yeah, exactly. Delete him. No longer a friend. Delete him from the show. Jeffrey wrote us. No, we need to stay there. Don't go away.
Yeah. Stay.
Jeffrey wrote, I love the 2001 iMac that had the half circle base with the shiny silver arm with the screen attached to it. Reminded me of a little robot. I never had, I started mine later on in life. I never had that one.
Oh, I had that one. I had the 20-inch one. It was like a lamp.
Yes, it reminded me of the little Pixar logo, the little lamp that jumps on the screen. Melissa wrote, I loved my 17-inch MacBook Pro with the removable battery. I had that one. It was gigantic. It was I could swap batteries out whenever I needed more power. Not only that, but it was heavy as heck. Like I remember that being but the screen was so nice because it was so big. That might have been, Stephen, my first Mac. That might have been the first one.
I did have one of those, and the one thing I always remember about is how warm it got. You could heat your house with it.
You tend, oh Lord. We also we went straggling in. Jordan wrote us, I absolutely love the colored iMacs from the early 2000s. When I was younger, my computer lab at school had dozens, and the entire room was a rainbow with all the different colored computers. Oh, thanks, Jordan.
Those are the days.
I got to do a shout out. If you're on YouTube and you're an Apple fan, there's a woman by the name of iJustine, and we'll post this on our social media afterwards. She did a very, very funny little YouTube short where she takes her 1984 original Mac computer on a trip to Cupertino, California to see its home. And it's this whole journey, like she takes it on the plane. She actually bought a seat for it, believe it or not. And she takes it in the Uber and goes all the way to Cupertino, goes to Steve Jobs Theater, sits it next to a Mac Pro. It's a very, very cute little thing. So do check that out if you want.
I do love that Apple, they really embrace the history. They really embrace it. It's part of their history. I know it's where they're going now. No one's suggesting they're ever going to bring it back. But, it was a fantastic machine. I remember that 1984 Mac. I used one at school. I honestly feel so old this week. It is incredible.
Don't feel old, Stephen. Don't do it. Don't do it. That's all the time we have. Thank you at home, obviously, for getting involved in the question. Keep them coming. We'll talk about them next week if we got some more stragglers in. Again, Macintosh computer, not mac and cheese or Big Mac.
Not burgers.
Thank you to Steve Saylor. Congratulations to all the winners of the Game Conf Awards. And, of course, to Sandy Lacey from the How Innovation Center. Stephen Scott, thank you for being here every single week. On behalf of everybody on the show, we wish you a wonderful week, and we'll chat with you again next week here on Access Tech Live. Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to Access Tech Live. Follow us online on all social media at Access Tech Live. Email us feedback@accesstechlive.com. Hosted by Stephen Scott in Glasgow and Marc Aflalo in Montreal. Written by Stephen Scott and Marc Aflalo. Producer, Marc Aflalo. Live show director, Anastasia Spalding-Stenhouse. Technical director, Caitlin Robinson. Audio, Jordan Mulgrave. Live graphics and playback, Kingsley Juco. Graphics coordinator, Eliza Rocco. Integrated Described video specialist, M. Williams. Supervising producer, Michelle Dudas. Produced in collaboration with Aflalo Communications Inc. and Double Tap Productions. Copyright 2024, Accessible Media Inc.
An AMI original production.